Hello, neighbor. I'm Robert Burns, and this is going to be one of the very briefest Sound Off Louisiana features that we have ever put out. But I am delighted and thrilled to bring this news to you, as was predicted, and as I think why the mainstream media was not there to cover any of this case. The jury has already rendered its judgment with regard to Brett Tingle versus ATC and Troy Hebert, and as I had said from the outset, it would be a big fat goose egg. I do not know the exact time that the matter went to the jury. I think it was probably a little after 4 o'clock. I got the text at 5:38 that they had returned with their verdict of 0. And I think that just demonstrates the utter absurdity of actually bringing this litigation in the first place, given what you've already seen, and I'm not going to reiterate. I will just briefly say the final defense witness was Ms. Lombard, the current ATC commissioner, and she was in total agreement with Troy Hebert that she said, she came from a private law practice, and she said, when you had a problematic employee, said what you did was you brought them in and said, look, here's the deal, you're terminated. Said if you wanted to be nice, you give them a 1-week severance. And she said, I'm at a loss as to how this can still be up in the air that she had to deal with. And then she was found out, well, there's this appeal process and this, that, and the other. So she certainly came across as no big fan of the civil service system and the kind of abuses that can take place in it when you have employees such as Brett Tingle. I will briefly also say that Art Smith, in his closing arguments, he said it would be about 45 minutes. I'm gonna be honest, I left after about an hour and 10 minutes because I couldn't listen anymore. Okay, he basically said this was a gross invasion of Mr. Tingle's privacy, and that beyond the sexual encounters that he relayed about his wife, that never would have been intended for the public to see. He had things like his social security number, his bank accounts. All of this is on a state-issued cell phone. So I guess the one lesson to be learned from all state employees is that, and I guess if they could have assessed a stupidity assessment against Mr. Tingle, perhaps the jury would have seen appropriate to do so. But look, don't be putting this kind of stuff on a state-issued cell phone. This is not your personal cell phone. I mean, just further indication that this guy's just not real bright, okay? He thinks he is, but he's not, okay? I will briefly say that, I mean, Art Smith there were so many botched things in this trial that it's too difficult to enumerate out. However, when he was cross-examining Ms. Lombard, he got very argumentative with her and said, well, the jury, he had said, well, the jury can see whether what you're saying is accurate. Now, I just got this news a second ago, and so I haven't, and I'm just going to do this. This is Ms. Lombard, okay, and she was a very effective witness. She's a lawyer, you know, and as you can tell, she is the first African-American commissioner. She is the first female commissioner, I believe, and also the first attorney commissioner. And she said she came into one more whale of a mess, and she did, obviously. And she said she had folk that let it be known that she didn't think she should have the job in the first place. But at any rate, if you can see this, and I did take a look at the jury as Art Smith chose to get argumentative with her in his in his cross examination of her, and I could tell it did not go over well with the two black females. I can tell you that right now. So chalk one up as one more error, if you want to use it as a baseball game, on the part of Art Smith. That's going to wrap this whole thing up. I want to say one thing. For those of you who have heard nothing but negativity on Troy Hebert, and I was in that camp, I'm not here saying he should be nominated for sainthood, as I think none of us would, but I'm going to tell you something. If Troy Hebert and his business mentality could be implemented throughout state government, and it be able to be done, I mean, clearly, as we're seeing, it's going to take some kind of major reform for that to be able to happen. But I shudder to think just how good state government might end up being. You know, instead, as the man would insist on more productivity, what happened? People would go out on Family and Medical Leave Act, and I think that's reprehensible because, you know, either you're dedicated to your job or you're not, okay? I will be blunt, I work for a gentleman that was the field office supervisor in Baton Rouge. He and I didn't have a great relationship, but when he told me to do something, I did it, okay? Because that's what you do. He was my supervisor. You know, I remember once, I'll briefly say this, in the federal government, it's changed now because you do the travel vouchers all online, but it was mandatory. It had to be signed in blue ink. Well, I can remember being in Houma once, and I inadvertently signed the travel voucher in black ink. As one time I did that, I just accidentally forgot. But at any rate, they have 10 days. They did have 10 days to get them on to Memphis. He still had a full 7 days to still get them there, but he told me he wanted me to drive in that Tuesday night. I was at the bank. I was in the middle of a big project, and he said I had to come in that very day and redo the travel voucher and get it. And the travel vouchers have to be typed. Trust me, everybody dreaded doing these travel vouchers because you had to they were due by the 3rd Friday of every month. And so I was going to have to totally redo mine, of course, and sign it in blue ink. I had already promised him, and he knew if I promise you something, I'm going to do it. I had promised him I would come in on Friday. He had my word. I would not leave that office until he had gotten the finalized travel voucher. He said, Robert, let me make this clear. You will get in here today and get this travel voucher typed up again and sign it in blue ink. And I said, well, now that does mean I'm entitled to travel time. I thought he would fight me on the travel time. It means you get travel time both on Tuesday and the following Monday to come back to work, which is absolutely nuts in terms of the lost productivity. But he was my supervisor, and I did what he told me to do. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I was thrilled about it, because I wasn't. But I knew he's the boss, and he probably never knew just how aggravated I was because I kept it inside, you know. But this business of, I don't like Troy Hebert, look what he's done. He actually expected some of these people to work, and what did they do? They went off and started abusing the Family and Medical Leave Act. I made this video longer than I would. I think a number of us owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to Troy Hebert for at least trying. And I'm going to share on a personal note, I'm not proud of the previous video that I put out, even though I was going on things that had been told to me. And I will share this with you. I apologize to Troy Hebert for my prior feature from way back when. And he looked at me and said, Mr. Burns, you don't owe me any apology. He said, if all of the things that have been put out there about me, he said, I would think I'm an evil, you know, no good person. So I appreciated that, because let me tell you something. Troy Hebert, you know, like I said, I'm not ready to nominate him for sainthood. I'm not ready to nominate myself for sainthood or anybody else. But he darn sure is not what has been depicted in prior press articles about him. And for those who authored those articles, I'm not going to name who they are, but I think you need to go back and re-examine. And I think you need to take a look at a line of pure B unadulterated horse manure that you got fed in the composition of those articles. And this litigation was 100% unadulterated horse, okay? That's what it was. And it's like I said in the first video, it's very unfortunate that we can't assess our own legal defense costs against Art Smith for bringing this garbage. Having said that, thank you so much, Jeff Landry. Thank you. Thank you for holding the line so that other attorneys don't get, if we can wind up costing a few of these attorneys some big time money, even though it cost us more, and like I said, I'll write the check for this because it's a long-term investment. We have got to bring a halt to this garbage, okay? So thank you so much, Jeff Landry. For those, this series has been incredibly widely viewed. It's been some of the more popular videos that we've put out. Thank you so much for your dedication and tuning them in. The justice system worked. Brett Tingle is going home with a big goose egg. This whole thing never should have even transpired. Now, I'll say this, when I broke away from Art Smith, I went ahead and went to the press club. I videotaped Ronnie Jones. He's the chairman of the Gaming Commission. I'm not going to do a full-blown post on him, but at the bottom of this post, we're going to give a direct link to his video for anyone who would like to go and watch him. And on Thursday, we will be in Monroe, Louisiana, where the State Police Commission has committed to rendering its decision on the Vegas 4. We'll have that. I can take my camera in for that. I sure wish I could have had it in for some of these courtrooms, because it's one thing to describe it, it's another thing if I could have videotaped it. We will look to have that feature from the State Police Commission from Thursday jury on out to you with their decision. This is Robert Burns. Thanks once again to the many loyal viewers that we've had, and thank you to those jurors. I don't know their names. Maybe you'll end up going and looking at these pieces now that you're free to do that. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thanks for doing it as expeditiously. Maybe not quite as I thought. If you're jurors and you're seeing it for the first time, I had predicted 20 minutes. It probably takes a little longer than that to get in there and get everybody, situated and but obviously they didn't have to spend long. So at 5:35, I got the text that it was a big goose egg, and I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so, Art. All right, so thank you once again for the dedicated viewership. Get ready for that State Police Commission rendering later this week. This is Robert Burns. We'll be back with you later this week. Thank you again.